we're in the month of Kislev, and we have Chanukah just a couple of weeks away. So we're going to learn a maimer on Chanukah. One of the previous mamorim that we learned was Lahavin Inyan Simchas Torah, which the Rebbe said following the heart attack, Maitzoi Simchas Torah in 1977. So we talked about this a little bit then, and we'll just recap now. This maimer that we're going to learn now we're going to start learning now is a maimer from Chanukah 1977. Maitzoi Shabbos Parshas Miketz, Shabbos Chanukah, and this was following the massive heart attack the Rebbe suffered on Shmini Atzeres, the evening of Shmini Atzeres in 1977. And this year we're marking 40 years from that episode, from that event, and Reish Chodesh Kislev, just on Sunday of this week, we marked 40 years from when the Rebbe went home for the first time after the heart attack. So let's just review a little bit of that before we just give us a little bit more of a historical context before we get into the
why did they have the heart attack?
No, but there's some allusion to it, but we'll see. At any rate, so in 1977.
Say something with someone else.
No, Rahman is something.
No, because Manny's your friend, and you brought money, and he picked me for a reason.
Okay, so on Shmini Atzeres 1977, Tavshin Lamed Ches, during Hakafis, in the middle of the Hakafis, Rebbe suffered a massive heart attack. Nobody even recognized the severity of it at the time, but it was one of these life-threatening heart attacks. Dr. Ira Weiss, so we're not going to go through the whole story now, but basically middle of Hakafis, during the fifth Hakafa, everybody cleared out. Imagine 770, the Rebbe's shul, Simchas Torah, is the fullest it is all year. The place was packed, and the energy level was high, and suddenly the Rebbe turned white, and the Rebbe asked for the chair, the Rebbe sat down, and everybody immediately evacuated the building for the Rebbe to have some air. The Rebbe didn't go anywhere. He sat through the rest of the Hakafas, and then himself led the seventh Hakafa, even in the midst of what he was going through, this medical emergency. There was probably a few, definitely a few minyanim there for sure. So tens of people. Yeah, of the thousands of people, thousands left. At any rate, they were outside. The Rebbe led the seventh Hakafa, and then went upstairs to his room, climbed the steps to his room. The doctors wanted to take the Rebbe to the hospital. It became clear during the course of the evening that this was a life-threatening situation. They said they can't treat him in his room. In the meantime, the Rebbe said he's not going to the hospital. He should be treated. Yeah, we've gone through all the details. Now is not the time, I don't think, to go through all the details again. But the Rebbe said he insisted on staying in his room. He wanted to be treated in his room, in his office on the main floor of 770. Doctors were leaving because they didn't want to be responsible for what was going to happen. In the meantime, they were bringing in equipment from hospitals and other places. There's equipment that NASA was using. They were using heart monitor that they brought into the Rebbe's room. Anyway, late in the middle of the night, it was after 4 a.m, that they finally contacted Dr. Ira Weiss, a cardiologist in Chicago, and he was on the next flight out, the first flight out on Shmini Atzeres morning to New York to come treat the Rebbe. In the meantime, his friend Dr. Tischholz came. Anyway, Dr. Weiss spoke about the fact that this heart attack, people don't even realize the miracle, because an event like this, people generally don't recover from such an event. They're usually very short of breath. They can barely stand up and get out of a bed without losing their breath. They have to be hooked up to oxygen all the time, and the mortality rate is very high. You don't live very long after such a thing. It's just too much on the heart. You don't live very long. And he was saying that the Rebbe was basically a medical miracle. What happened? The fact that the Rebbe was able to recover fully, essentially, to regain full functionality. And we know that the next, over the next decade plus, the next 14 years, until the next major medical issue, the stroke, the Rebbe's output was tremendous. And so that's something that you don't usually see. So the Rebbe was treated in his room from Shmini Atzeres, and then for the next 5 weeks the Rebbe remained in his room. Reish Chodesh Kislev was the first time the Rebbe left. He had gone out to the library next door before that, but this was the first time the Rebbe went home, and that sort of signaled that the Rebbe was sort of all the way back to an extent. And so Reish Chodesh Kislev became a day of thanksgiving, of celebration. And this year we just marked 40 years. This is so it's a very significant milestone. Now, all this time, remarkably, the Rebbe suffered the heart attack on the evening of Shmini Atzeres. On Motzai Simchas Torah, and the Rebbe remained in his room afterwards. There were minyanim, the things, services were going, but the Rebbe was in his room secluded. Nobody saw the Rebbe. Motzai Simchas Torah, so only 48 hours later, the Rebbe spoke from his room. And the Rebbe asked, the doctors granted him permission to speak for 5 minutes. And the Rebbe spoke for 23 minutes, I think it was. And afterwards, he actually thanked them for allowing him to go over his allotted time. And the Rebbe spoke from his room. He wasn't laying in bed. The Rebbe had sat up. He was wearing his hat and his kapot. And actually, you hear the Rebbe had asked one of the secretaries before he started for his gartel. The Rebbe actually put on his gartel and sat and spoke on a microphone that was being broadcast downstairs to the shul. This is at 12 o'clock at night, Motzei Simchas Torah. Anyway, and then the Rebbe proceeded every Motzei Shabbos afterwards to speak Motzei Shabbos. So the regular Farbrengens during Shabbos were now on hold, to speak on Shabbos in a large room in front of thousands of people without a microphone. You have to speak loud. That's obviously very taxing, very difficult. So the Rebbe would speak Motzei Shabbos, and there was a sicha, there was a mimer incorporated into the sicha. And not only was there a sicha and there was a mimer every Motzei Shabbos, following Shabbos of those subsequent weeks, but the Rebbe actually reviewed and edited those talks, including the mimer. And so we have a bunch of mamarim from that time. So we learned earlier this year, during Tishrei, we studied Lahavan Simchas Torah, which is a mimer that was incorporated in the Rebbe's talk, that first talk, Motzei Simchas Torah. And then there are other mamarim that were then published, edited by the Rebbe, that were published at the time, during that time period. Yutas Kislev marked the first time after, so even though there's a Shreidish Kislev, the Rebbe had gone home, but Yutas Kislev was the first time the Rebbe came out to Farbring downstairs in the shul, as he normally would. There was a big public Farbring, and the Rebbe Farbring downstairs. What's interesting is that the doctors, Doctors Larry Resnick and Dr. Vadalachaim, Dr. Ira Weiss, who two the doctors treating the Rebbe, had hooked the Rebbe up to a wireless heart monitor, which was also 1977 was a big. There weren't many of those kinds of devices around, but the Rebbe was wearing a heart monitor under his clothing. Nobody knew of it. Nobody could see it, and the doctors sat at a table, or sat in the crowd in 770 at the Farbrengen, and were monitoring the Rebbe's heart, and the understanding was that if they felt that the Rebbe was in danger medically, they would stop the Farbrengen and they would take the Rebbe back to his room. And they sat at the Farbrengen. They had a little monitor tucked under the bench in front of them. And when the Rebbe was speaking, the heart, they saw an arrhythmia. The heart was not, it wasn't okay. And they were debating between themselves whether to stop the Farbrengen or not. They felt that they probably should stop the Farbrengen, but on the other hand, there was this whole group there. People were finally happy that the Rebbe was with them. The Rebbe was happy to be back to work and back where he wanted to be, which is sitting with the Chassidim and teaching and talking. And so they wrestled with this idea, and ultimately they let the Farbrengen go. And Dr. Weiss, the Rebbe's life, wasn't sure if they made the right decision or not, but that's what happened. Remarkably, he says that when the Rebbe started the mimer, the Rebbe said a mimer then at that Farbrengen, and when the Rebbe said the mimer, suddenly his heart rate was completely normal and calm. So where during the sichas, during the talks, it was all over the place. When the Rebbe said the mimer, his heart rate was completely normal. It was like two different people, two different hearts. That was something that was very significant and remarkable to them. Anyway, that's the Yutas Kislev Farbrengen. The next big Farbrengen that occurred downstairs, the Rebbe continued to speak afterwards on the microphone, from his room. I believe the next big Farbrengen was Motzei Shabbos Parshas Miketz. That's the Farbrengen from which this mimer was taken. This mimer, the Rebbe said, the tune of a mimer at this Farbrengen, and that's why it was a Motzei Shabbos Farbrengen. It wasn't on Shabbos Chanukah, it was Motzei Shabbos. I'm sorry?
His heart was normal?
No, that was Yutas Kislev. I don't know about this Farbrengen, I don't know. That was when the Rebbe said a mimer on Yutas Kislev.
This is 2 weeks later.
This was, yeah. So
the
Rebbe said this mimer. Then this Farbrengen Saturday night, Motzei Shabbos Chanukah. 2 days later, the next day, Sunday, there was a children's rally, and then Monday, which was Zeis Chanukah, the last day of Chanukah, the Rebbe called Rabbi Yankel Hecht, J.J. Hecht, into his office and said he was looking for somebody who can keep a secret. I don't know if he can keep a secret. He wants to tell him something, but he needs it to be a secret. The Rebbe said he wants to farbring. Basically, the Rebbe said that he wants to complete everything from Simchas Torah. So you see, this is still a process of finishing. What's interesting, by the way, is Bachram, when the Rebbe went home on Rosh Chodesh Kislev, so immediately Bachram went and continued Hakafis right afterwards. It was like sort of everything was like on hold from the heart attack till the Rebbe went home. In the Rebbe's own mind, it seems also that he felt that he had unfinished business from Simchas Torah. He hadn't given kosher bracha. He had given people mashke, but the Rebbe himself hadn't personally given kosher bracha. So Simchas Torah, there would be a farbrengen, and then afterwards there'd be Ma'ariv. Then the Rebbe would make Havdalah, and then the Rebbe would give kosher bracha as he would at the end of every Yom Tov. None of the Hecht. He wants to finish the unfinished business from Simchas Torah. So there's going to be a farbrengen, and just like on Simchas Torah, at the end of any holiday, we wash, and the Rebbe would wash, and then there would bench, and then there'd be kosher bracha. The Rebbe wanted to do the same thing, so he needs somebody to arrange it for him, but it has to be a secret. He can't tell anybody. So Rabbi Hecht asked the Rebbe if he could tell the office, the Rebbe's office, the Merkez office. The Rebbe said no. He asked if he could tell some others. There were others that he asked if he could tell. The Rebbe said he asked if he could tell the Bachrim in the yeshiva. The Rebbe said if you tell the Bachrim here in yeshiva, it's like broadcasting it to Australia. So that was no. And anyway, the Rebbe let him tell his brothers. He asked if I could tell my brothers. The Rebbe said yes. And he also told his son in New Jersey. He kind of gave him that, sort of that he should come from Mars, not from the yeshiva. Anyway. But it was a secret. Meantime, he ran out to get supplies. There needs to be mashke, there needs to be wine, there needs to be challah. The Rebbe wanted to wash, so he right away, after he left the Rebbe's room, he had gone out and he had called the bakery. He said, "I need you guys to make me challah immediately." Anyway, it said in that conversation with the Rebbe said that he wanted him to keep a secret. The Rebbe said that he heard from his father. The Rebbe said there are three types of balei side, three types of people that keep a secret. There's one person who you press them a little bit and they'll divulge the secret. Then there's another type of person who you could tell that they have a secret, but you're not going to get it out of them, but you know they have a secret. The third type, the best, is somebody you don't even know that he's keeping a secret. You have no idea that he's even keeping a secret. Anyway, Rabbi Hecht reasoned that he could tell Rabbi Beryl Eunuch about the farbrengen, because Rabbi Eunuch was the one responsible for the Rebbe to give the Rebbe his cup and to pour the wine. So he felt that he should tell Rabbi Eunuch. And because he didn't want to take that job from him, he wanted him to be there and to be ready to do what do what he had to do. So he told him, sorry, he didn't. So the Rebbe eventually told the Maskiris, and like at 1 o'clock it came out that after Mincha there was going to be a farbrengen. And so there was a farbrengen. This was already Zeis Chanukah. This is 2 days after this farbrengen on Monday, and then afterwards there was Kosher Bracha. And at that farbrengen, the Rebbe said another mimer. Mitzvas that mimer is a continuation of this mimer. Actually, that's connected. But anyway, point is, you see, there's sort of a connection, a continuation to this 40-year celebration from Rosh Chodesh Kislev. Interesting. After that farbrengen, the next day the Rebbe called Rabbi Hecht and asked him how he managed to keep the secret. What did he do? What do you do? He's coming. There's a guy coming with a load of challah on a Monday to 7/7. Like what was going on? So he said he kept it all in his car. He loaded his car up. He kept it in the car till the next day. And he said that he had told Rabbi Eunuch because Rabbi asked how did Rabbi Eunuch. No, he said that he gave him his reasoning why he told him. But the Rebbe said one comment the Rebbe had for him was that next time he shouldn't bring 2 challahs. Apparently he put 2 challahs on the table because then people are going to assume that during the week you also have to have lechem mishnah. You want people to draw their own conclusion. He had to bring 2 challahs. He said next time just 1 challah is enough. But anyway, that was the farbrengen of Zeis Chanukah, sort of like a Suda Seidah, really a Thanksgiving farbrengen following the events of Shemoneh Atzeres and Simchas Torah. Okay. Now we're going to get into the mimer. Before we get into the mimer, let's just do a little background here on this subject. So we have the famous Chanukah sugya from the Gemara in Shabbos. We have some just because it gets a little technical at the beginning and in the middle. So just to be familiar a little bit with what we're going to be referencing here. Okay, so let's take a look here. This is from the Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Chaf Aleph Amid Beis, 21b. So let's look at. Let's look from Viriminu. No, earlier on the page, it's opposite Tosfos, the Ilo Yadlik Madlik, right? Okay. So let's first look over there. It says, the Gemara says, Viriminu, a question. The Gemara here talking about Kafsaf, the Chanukah light was extinguished. Do you have to relight it or not relight it? So then the Gemara says, Mitzvasa brings a teaching here. Mitzvasa mishatishka achama. The mitzvah of Chanukah, of the menorah, lighting the menorah, is from when the sun sets, ad shetichla regel min hashuk, until there ceases to be foot traffic. Nobody's left in the marketplace. Right, so the Gemara brings a proof from that. What that means? Okay, the Gemara then articulates its question. But let's keep going. Skip another line. What the Gemara wants to know? What does it mean? Regel min hashuk, until there's nobody left in the marketplace. So va'ad kama. What time is that? So we know from sundown. We know when sundown is. But when are people no longer in the marketplace? When is that? So Amar Rabanan says in the Rabanan, ad the kalya rigla de tarmudoi, until there ceased to be the rigla de tarmudoi, the people, the tarmudoians, the tarmudoians, which is a group of people of they were wood sellers. They would sell firewood, and they were the last ones to leave the marketplace. Why? Because people would go home after the day. They'd get home. They'd realize they have no wood for a fire, so they'd have to go back, scramble back to the market to go find wood that they need to get them through the night. So they would be these Tarmudoians, which with this group of they were open late basically. So when they would leave, that's when that's the end. That's your window for candle lighting. Okay, let's keep going. So that's the ad the kalya regel minaj ad shetichla regel minashuk is ad the kalya rigla de tarmudoi. That statement, the rigla de tarmudoi, is going to be significant. We're going to touch on it later in the mimer as well. Okay, next Tanu Rabanan. This is what this is the quote that our this is what the quote from where our mimer gets its title. Tanu Rabanan. The sage is taught in a brisa that Mitzvas Chanukah ner ishu beisei. The mitzvah of Chanukah is one candle. What's the obligation for Chanukah? Is that everybody lights one candle at home. So all 8 days of Chanukah, you light a candle. Every night of Chanukah, you light one candle in the house, and that's your Chanukah observance. V'amahadrin, but if you want to do the mitzvah even better, you want to do it even nicer, so then ner l'kol echad ve'echad. You don't just light one candle in the house, but every family member in the house, whoever lives in the house, you have 5 people living in the house, so all 5 light a candle. And every night of Chanukah, everybody in the house lights one candle. But the people that want to be extra special in terms of their performance, so here we already have a dispute. Beis Shammai says that the first day of Chanukah, the first night of Chanukah, you light 8 candles, and then from there on, you decrease. So the first night you light 8 candles, the second night you light 7, the third night 6, etc. Till you get down to the last night of Chanukah, the 8th night of Chanukah, you light 1 candle.
Based on the opinion that's saying you don't 8 candles.
No, this is a third thing. Well, there's a machlekes as to there's a machlekes between Rambam and Tosfos about whether this builds on the previous one or not. Whether Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are talking about the issue basically. Does everybody have to light 8, 7, 6, or 1, 2, 3, or just one household member? So, in other words, does it uproot the Mahadrim? Okay, but that's not. We're not going to get into that. Okay, you can see that in Tosfos here on the side, and then the Rambam talks about it. Okay. Beis Hillel says the first night you light 1, and from there on every night you increase another candle. So the first night 1, the second night 2, and obviously machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. Whenever there's a dispute, we know with very little exception we follow Beis Hillel, and so that's what we do. We light. Everybody knows that we light the menorah. The first night you light 1 candle, and then we increase. Okay. Amar Ula says that in Israel, in the West, there's a dispute between some of the sages as to the reasoning behind these 2 opinions, the opinion of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Rabbi Yossi bar Rav and Rabbi Yossi bar Zvida. These are the 2 sages that argue. Chad Amar time of the Beis Shammai keneged Yom HaNechrasim. The time of the Beis Hillel keneged Yom HaYotzim. One says the reason for Beis Shammai, his opinion is that we're counting the days that are leaving, and Beis Hillel says we count the days that are coming. Meaning, on the first day of Chanukah, there are 8 days of Chanukah. On the second day, there are only 7 days left. So how many days are left? That's how many candles we light. So on the third night, there's only 6 days left. You light 6 candles, and so on and so forth. Finally, on the last day, there's only the last day, 1 day, so there's 1 candle. Beis Hillel says, no, we focus on what's coming. So on the first day, we still have 8 days of Chanukah, so we light 1, right? And then the second, there's only been 1 day, so we light 1. And then the second day, we've had 2 days of Chanukah, so we light 2, etc. The Chadamar, the other opinion says, time of the Beis Shammai connected Parei Achak. Beis Shammai's reasoning is that it corresponds to the bulls that were offered in the Beis Hamikdash on Sukkot. The time of the Beis Hillel, and the reason for Beis Hillel is the Mailam HaKadosh Ve'Meridim. Yeah, and the reason of Beis Hillel is because there's a rule for the Gemara Menachos learns that we say that Mailam HaKadosh always increase in holiness of 8 and then decrease to 7. That would be a decrease in holiness. If 8 candles you go down, but on the other hand, the contrary, you have to increase in holiness. Okay. So this is the machlekes between. That's decreasing. There's when you have what gives more light, 8 candles or 7 candles. Okay. So this is the first part. This is the Gemara. The Maimer takes its title from this Gemara here. We're going to ask some obvious questions on this. The Gemara telling us that Beis Shammai says that you decrease every day 8, 7, 6. Beis Hillel says you increase 1, 2, 3. What is the dispute? What is the dispute center around? Beis Shammai says that it connected. Beis Hillel says Mailam HaKadosh. So, which is what possible connection is there between the bulls of Sukkot that are brought in the Beis Hamikdash and Sukkot with Chanukah? That's an obvious question. The Marsha asked that question. Marsha gives an answer. We can talk about that maybe when we get into the Maimer, but that's a question we have to address. What is the story with the bulls on Sukkot? So in the Beis Hamikdash, the way it worked among the holiday offerings were 13 bulls. On the second day of Sukkot, decreased till the last day of Sukkot. You had 7. So it went 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. Now, if you tally up these bulls that are brought, 13 plus 12 plus 11 plus 10, etc., you end up with 70. And these 70 correspond to the 70 nations, and that's why we're Peichesveld, we decrease. But that was corresponding to those nations. That was the order in which they were brought in the temple, was that they decreased. So what's interesting is, some of the commentaries discuss this, every day there was less and less oil. That's basically kind of what he was saying. So therefore, even though we have, so Beis Shammai feels, the way, understand Marsha, Beis Shammai feels that the decrease is for a reason, even though the rule is that you have to increase, but we want to highlight the miracle. How'd the miracle happen? First day you had enough for 8, you had a full measure, and then every day you had less and less oil, and that represented the miracle. So therefore we have a reason to sort of overrule Mailam HaKadosh. Where Beis Hillel says that maybe so that's how he learns that Beis Shammai's opinion. In the Maimer we're going to learn a different understanding of the connection with the Parei Chag. We're going to learn a more mystical, deeper connection. But Beis Hillel, on the other hand, says no, Mailam HaKadosh takes precedence. You have to increase. Okay, let's fast forward. How are we doing on time? Time is it? Have 5 more minutes? We have 5 minutes. So while we're already in here, before we see, we're not going to get into the actual Maimer today. Let's go further. Leave it going. No? Yeah. Let's look a little further down in the Gemara here, because this is also going to be relevant to later in the Maimer. So let's look. The famous question, my Chanukah. So this would be 1, 2, 3 lines before the end of the narrow lines on the page. So the Gemara asks, my Chanukah, what's Chanukah? What's the question, my Chanukah? What's the question, my Chanukah? What's Chanukah? So Rashi tells us, my Chanukah al ezenas kavua. What was the reason for establishing what was the miracle? Can we pinpoint one episode or one thing for which the sages established Chanukah? That's how Rashi learns it. Not everybody learns it that way, and that has halachic ramifications as well. But let's just follow Rashi here. My Chanukah, what's Chanukah? The Tanu Rabanan sages taught b'chafei b'kislev on chafei b'kislev yom Chanukah, that beginning on the 25th of Kislev is the festival, the days of Chanukah, and Tmanya Inun, they are 8 days which were not given the Leila Mispet Bahin or the Leila Isanes Bahin. These are 8 days in which we do not fast and we do not eulogize, because they're a holiday. They're a holiday, so it's not a day that you don't work, but it's a day that you can't fast, you can't eulogize, because they're happy, they're celebratory days. Why? When the Greeks entered the temple, Timu kol hashmanim shebehechel. They defiled all of the oil that was in the temple. The one of the services in the Beis Hamikdash was the lighting of the menorah, not like the Chanukah menorah. There was the menorah that was lit every single day in the temple. Excuse me, and that menorah was lit with oil. The oil, like everything else in the temple, needed to be pure, ritually pure, and they would have also, there was a room, there was the Lishkas Hashmonim, where they had oil for different things. So they had oil stored throughout the temple in jugs. So there's the oil that was saved for the menorah. That oil was special oil. Unlike the other oils, that oil had to have been extra special because, like the pasuk says, "Kasis lamar," it's the first drop of oil, etc. And that oil was sealed with the seal of the high priest, which symbolized that it was pure, ritually pure, and therefore ritually fit to be used to light the menorah. When the Greeks entered the temple, they defiled all of the oil. By merely tampering with the oil, it would be evidence that by touching it, that they would convey tumah, ritual impurity, to the oil, and then the oil would become impure. So when they came in, when the Greeks invaded the temple, they defiled all the oil. After the Chashmonaim uprising and they defeated them, they kicked them out. They searched, they only were able to find one small jar of oil that was munach, was sort of hidden, and still its seal was still intact, which meant that the Greeks didn't see it, and therefore it wasn't defiled. It only had enough to light for one day, to last for one day. A miracle occurred, and that oil lasted for 8 days. They lit from that oil for 8 days. So the following year, after this miracle of the oil lasting for 8 days, they established it. The following year, they established it as a holiday in Hallel, in Thanksgiving, and in praise and Thanksgiving. Praise would be, we say Hallel every day of Chanukah. Hoidah would be the Thanksgiving, which is Va'al Nisim, which we say in Shemon Esrei, in the Amidah 3 times a day, and in benching. So that's how they established the holiday. This Gemara itself, we can do quite a few shurim on this Gemara and the ramifications, the many questions that pile up on it, and the way things add up and don't add up. But let's leave it at that. The point from the Gemara here is that the Greeks defiled all the oil, and that the miracle occurred with one cruse of oil. And that's the essence of Chanukah. We want to know what Chanukah is. Chanukah is the miracle of the oil. That's what's apparent from a simple reading of this Gemara, and this will be relevant as we move into the Maimer Mitzvah in the next class.